Hi everyone, Crystal here. Hope you're having a wonderful day. I wanted to share a little bit about what it could feel like if you're going through a spiritual awakening. So for me, what I experienced was the beginning of questioning things that I used to just take as the word, right? As that was it. This is how it is. And I really felt sort of this internal part of me opening up to the possibility of considering that maybe my perspectives or my beliefs were maybe not in alignment. So I just initially began to feel a little bit more open about some things that I used to actually have completely shut off, or maybe I had labeled some of those things as evil or whatever. For me, I came from a Christian background, and I'm so grateful for it. So I absolutely don't regret it. It helped me really develop a relationship with Source, with God, and with Jesus. But what I found was there was something internally wanting to expand beyond that. And so lots of times we can feel this sort of like this pushing and pulling. We feel a lot of tension because I felt like internally my beliefs were changing, or I was just becoming more curious about things that I had sort of had locked down, or had labeled being a certain way. And then I became a little more open because I wanted to, and I felt the desire to discover if that was really true or not for me. And what I found was some of those things that I had sort of shoved away in a corner somewhere as an inappropriate belief or behavior, whatever that might be, now became something that actually I was beginning to just be curious about, and I could maybe accept that there was another direction or another way of perceiving or seeing things. And so I felt a lot of conflict internally because there's a lot of disruption that's happening from a foundational level. And so it felt quite uncomfortable, actually. So in one way, it can feel like it's exhilarating and it's freeing and it's very life-giving. But you might also feel a lot of guilt, and you might be experiencing like, I'm abandoning, the way that I have believed or perceived life to be. All of these kinds of things. You can experience all of these, the whole gamut of emotions all at the same time. And so that was a big part of it for me. It led me to just questioning many things, but at the same time, the desire and the openness to begin to also understand more of who I really am without certain labels or without certain beliefs or judgments. And so what I was finding was a lot of internal turmoil and conflict. And the more I began to realize this, the more I realized that my life truly was going to be changing. During that time, I also continued to hear Source speaking to me. In fact, actually through the transition or the expansion outside of my religious views, the voice actually remained the same. And there was no different. It was full of peace. I actually felt extreme peace through the process, but the ego or survival brain, the part of me that wanted acceptance, love from other people, certainly was suffering, let's put it that way. And so I did experience some extreme anxiety as I was actually going through this process. And I also experienced immense peace as well. So we can have these really interesting, conflicting types of things going on internally. And it is a process. Awakening is not something that just happens overnight. You can have an experience that might actually be like the kicker or the kickoff for that. But in terms of awakening, oftentimes it is a process over time. And this took place for me for probably about 2 or 3 years. But there came a point where I realized that I was living in a certain way and now it was time to shift. And so there was a feeling of like imposter syndrome, or like I even felt at times I'm living a lie. This is no longer in alignment or no longer true for me. And that was a really big deal because I'm letting go of things that were built into my foundation. And, you know, Source and our guides are so kind in not just ripping the whole carpet out from underneath us, but dealing with one pillar at a time. So as we're going through this process of awakening, I really would encourage you to be very kind to yourself and to understand that it's okay if you're feeling like you have your feet are in two different sort of realities or worlds. This is part of the process of awakening and waking up to ourselves, waking up to a new reality, which can be very disruptive. I will say that. And it was disruptive and it was extremely freeing all at the same time. So that's why I'm saying you can have the whole gamut of emotions and experiences. For me, a lot of my relationships changed. And then I also began to realize aspects around my marriage that really wasn't healthy, but I was not able to come into that space without addressing and letting go of some of my religious views. I would not have been able to actually shift the marriage as well, but that eventually did come to completion. And I say completion because it was not a waste of time. I don't regret it. We're still friends to this day, and I'm so grateful for that. And we definitely also took two different paths spiritually as well. That was not the initial thing that led to the completion of the marriage. However, it eventually also likely probably would have contributed to that to some degree. And neither of us really wanted to hold the other person back from being who they really were. And so we were able, in a loving but very difficult time, we were able to also to release each other, to follow the path that was best for each of us. And so like I'm saying, and this was also extremely painful and freeing all at the same time. So there's a lot of sort of inner work that needs to be done. But I can tell you that, I'm very grateful for the process, although I wouldn't care to repeat it. So I hope that helps you. And then in terms of some of the things that I was experiencing as I was shifting, because we're talking about everything is energy, everything's frequency and vibration. Internally, the more aligned I became, the healthier I also became. So my body also I started having less chronic pain, and other things were beginning to resolve themselves in this process. It was a very long process. It took like 2-3 years. But I also experienced things like people experience like this kind of ringing in the ear. I'm not talking about tinnitus type of thing. It's like a very high types of frequency, or you hear different sounds coming in at different times. And many times we're receiving information and there's downloading that's taking place on an energetic or frequency level. And the body also, though, needs time to catch up. And our emotions do, our belief systems do. So in this process, I would say be very gentle with yourself. Do not force anything. Allow it to come. I had things where I'm like, I don't even know where this fits. And I said, okay, guides, source, I'm going to put this belief on the shelf. I'm open to it, but I have nowhere in my belief framework right now to be able to receive that or have a container for that new belief that I can see is potentially coming in, but I don't know where to put it. So I'm like, I'm putting it on the shelf, and when I'm ready, You know when I'm ready. My body, my mind knows when I'm ready. My higher self knows when I'm ready to receive it, then bring it forward again when I'm ready to be able to process that. And that actually happened. It was about 2 months later. And then I had this particular thing coming into my belief system that I was now ready to not just consider, but then begin to explore and see what that really meant for me. So I am all about experience. It is not about just believing or taking people at their word. You need to experience for yourself, and that is also important. And at the same time, we also need people, we need a support system. So as you're going through this process, you need people who are going to support you. They're not judgmental. They're not trying to sway you this way or that way. You need to come to the decision yourself. It's really about you aligning with yourself. And so through this process, for me, it took quite some time. And I'm still going through aspects of it. Like, it's not over yet. There's lots of learning, but I experienced a lot of relief as I'm coming more into who I am. And as I'm coming more into who I am, an authentic Crystal, then my body actually is responding. I'm actually getting healthier. There's several things that are happening. My mental health, as I was going through this shift and seeing that other things were coming to completion, although it was difficult, I also started actually mentally, emotionally feeling better. But I also saw that some of the ways that I coped before were no longer serving me. And in some cases, I found that I'm like, I don't even have a coping mechanism for this issue that's coming up right now. So you'll find sometimes some upheaval going on internally, and just know that source is there and there are practitioners. I'm here, to support you as you're going through your awakening process as well. And many people are going through it. So you may get the fatigue, you may get the headaches, you may get things like that. I experienced a lot of that as my body was also shifting and adjusting. The moment we shift a belief, things physically will begin, it will trickle down into our energy and physical body as well. So when we shift into other aspects of consciousness or awareness, the body also will shift. And sometimes that can feel a little bit worse initially because the inflammation of the situation can come up. So sometimes we can experience more intense symptoms. And this is sometimes you should get checked out. If you really need to, go get checked out to make sure that you're okay on a physiological level. But I'm just saying that sometimes we can have these flare-ups or inflammation or something that has been over for a long time will kind of come back again. And the reason for that is because sometimes the body is just actually revisiting something that we're actually letting go of. So don't attach too much to those things. If you have emotions coming up or memories coming up, give yourself permission to see it, to sit with it, sit in it, ask it what it needs to help it feel a little bit better and more comfortable. And you'll be able to transmute and shift through those emotions with more ease. And it doesn't have to take months or years. Many people are shifting quite quickly these days, and it can happen in 10, 15 minutes or a few days of processing. So if you're finding you're going through these moments of highs and then lows or a lot of fatigue, just understand that this is also your body's way of making the adjustments. So sometimes we go through a big healing process and we're actually relaxed and we feel tired. This is the body's way of actually being in healing and restoration mode. So the body needs to be at rest or relaxed in order for us to heal. And you can't be in the survival brain, fight flight mode. The body doesn't heal. It actually will shut that down to help you survive through something. So it's important for us to make sure we have those times of restoration. And I will say that through the process, because I had also been burnt out several times, I also experienced extreme fatigue. And sometimes I still experience a lot of fatigue. And that's because there's so many things under the surface that are going on. And so we have to be kind and gentle to our bodies. And we're not used to doing that. We're used to pushing through all the time. And the body needs rest. The mind needs rest. And you will find that your energy will come back up, but we need to give ourselves permission as we're going through this process of awakening. So I hope that helps. There's many other things I'm sure that I experienced, but this was what I just felt to share today. And I hope you are encouraged. And if you have questions, feel free to pop a little note in the chat. Maybe I'll do a video about your question. So have a wonderful day, and congratulations if you are in this space of spiritual awakening. Take care. Bye for now.